Maria Abdi Ibrahim is just one of dozens of parents whose child has been given to a foster family by Barnevernet. Despite the objections of Ibrahim, who came to Norway as a refugee in 2009 with her baby born in Kenya, her child was taken and given to a Christian foster family in 2010.
Trying to find a new identity in Norway, and she said, nevertheless, that I don't want my child, to become like them, a Norwegian Christian, and the reply of the authorities was that, look, here in Europe, children are allowed to find their own identity.
Barnevernet officials meanwhile argue that no system can be free of problems and that they are working to improve the system. The practices of Norwegian Child Protection Service Barnevernet has long remained the focus of criticism. In 2015, Barnevernet received nationwide and global backlash for taking children, especially those of immigrant families under state protection or were ill treatment. When the efforts of families who lost their children to Barnevernet proved fruitless in Norwegian courts, they brought their cases before the European Court of Human Rights. In most of these Barnevernet cases, the European Court of Human Rights ruled in favor of the families.
Norway has been convicted several times in respect of Article 8 of the Convention, which protects the right to family life.
Maria Abdi Ibrahim is just one of dozens of parents whose child has been given to a foster family by Barnevernet. Despite the objections of Ibrahim, who came to Norway as a refugee in 2009 with her baby born in Kenya, her child was taken and given to a Christian foster family in 2010.
It's been so hard for her to take her child here to Norway to protect him and then ending up losing him so shortly to the Norwegian authorities. But I think that she was not given all the help she could have been given, and maybe the authorities and the child services didn't understand quite. She was very young, she hadn't been to school, like a normal Norwegian teenager. She had to figure everything out for herself in Norway, and she was being really brave. And I feel that it must have been very isolating for her to come to Norway, not be able to speak the language, not be able to understand the social code, and she was being held maybe to the same standard as applied to maybe a woman of, that was maybe speaking Norwegian, was older, and had everything in life together.
This lady, Abdi Ibrahim, was clearly, was struggling with the different identities, trying to find a new identity in Norway, and she said, nevertheless, that I don't want my child, to become like them, a Norwegian Christian, And the reply of the authorities was that, look, here in Europe, children are allowed to find their own identity. So you give this, very, how shall I say, brutal response to somebody who's somehow struggling to integrate, to find her place in Norwegian society. What kind of signal are we giving to this, poor mother, who is also, trying to find her place in Europe, in Norwegian society. So I thought, that from the integration point of view, there was a clear failure, that the woman was getting all the wrong signals.
Besides allowing children with limited contact with their families after the government protection process begins, Barnevernet has also taken flake for taking rushed decisions that a child cannot be reunited with their family.
Seems to be very, very concerned about the fact that the Norwegian authorities used to consider immediately that the children that were taken into public care will not be reunited with the family, so with the natural parent.
The first thought should be, is there anything we can do for the child to remain at home with biological parents? Do they need help? Maybe is it so bad that the child really needs to be taken away from parents? Or is it something can we give some sort of help to the parents? Because also Barnevernet, they have a duty, according to the law here in Norway, to offer help.
Adequate contact between the child in foster care and the natural parents. The Norwegian authorities considered that the children will stay away from the natural parents, and precisely for this reason, there was very limited contact. So there were contact visits, for example, 2 or 3 times per year, 2 hours each time, And then the conclusion 2-3 years later was that the child didn't have any real bond with the natural parents. But it was precisely the decision of the authorities to limit contact with natural parents that led to the non-existence of the natural bond. So somehow, the authorities were creating conditions that eventually lead to the adoption of the child.
Those cases are never easy to work with. They are difficult, also for me as a lawyer, because not only for me as a lawyer, but more like for me as a human being, because it concerns children, it concerns splitting up families, taking children away from their parents, and I see desperate parents who love the children and want to have them back. And of course, many of them feel powerless, many feel desperate to get the children back, and that affects me as a person.
This is somebody who has suffered a lot in her life. She comes here in order, to build a new future. I mean, the judgment talks about some kind of inadequacy, that in the beginning she could not take care of the child. We can imagine, that her inability to take care of the child might have had to do with the trauma that she has gone through, So my feeling is, that people like her, should be understood, because the first reply that she got, that here in Europe things are done differently, shows lack of understanding, should be understood, should be supported, and should be helped to integrate in European society,
Barnevernet officials meanwhile argue that no system can be free of problems and that they are working to improve the system. Kristin Ukstad Steinrum, International Department Director at Norwegian Directorate of Children, Youth and Family Affairs, to which Barnevernet is affiliated, told Anadolu agency in a written statement that no system is perfect, mistakes can happen, and therefore we are always working to improve our work to better ensure that children in Norway enjoy a safe upbringing. Having become the center of debate, Barnevernet has changed its approach and decision-making process due to this criticism and European Court of Human Rights rulings. Time will tell whether these changes will be effective.
And the court has criticized this very much in many judgments, and now the Norwegian authorities have had to change their legislation. There will be real change, and it will be hugely satisfactory if